Hello, my name is Stephen Denman. My organisation is Shining Guidance. My website is shiningguidance.com. I want to talk to you today about a very negatively based and subversive group of extraterrestrials known as the Orion Grays or Rigelian Grays that have had a long and very interesting history with the planet Earth going back many, many aeons ago. One of the most significant periods in ancient history was the time of the civilization of Sumer, which the Orion Grays, also known as the Rigelian Grays, used to introduce the concept of money and banking and taxation with their units and credit system, which they use as an enslavement transaction for social control purposes within their various societies on the planet Greada where they live, which is a world that orbits the blue supergiant star known as Rigel A, which is also known as Beta Orionis, which is located in the Orion constellation. Now, that's a huge subject to talk about for another day. I won't go into that now. But what I want to discuss is what took place with these interstellar agreements in the modern period. So coming forward for by a few aeons of time to the 11th of July 1934. The first alien treaty, or the Envoy Treaty, took place between the Orion Grays or Rigelian Grays from the planet Greada, which orbits this blue supergiant star known as Rigel A, which is also designated as Beta Orionis in the Orion constellation. The interstellar agreement that became known as the first alien treaty, or the Envoy Treaty, occurred on board a US Navy vessel that was moored up in the Balboa district on the Panama Canal in Panama City at the Pacific Ocean entrance in Central America between the Orion Grays or Rigelian Grays that were sent as diplomats and the 33rd degree Scottish Rite Freemason known as the US President Franklin Delano Roosevelt or FDR. What was said during that meeting has never been verified, but it represented the inception of what would eventually become the military industrial complex, or the MIC. So, that's a very significant period of time. It's never really discussed, but yes, that Pacific date and that Pacific first interstellar agreement, known as the First Alien Treaty or the Envoy Treaty, was very symbolic. The next interstellar agreement that took place, that was known as the Second Alien Treaty, occurred on the 13th of October 1944 when a designated group of diplomats who were Orion Grays or Rigelian Grays acting on behalf of their own supervisors within the Orion Confederation again met with the US President Franklin Delano Roosevelt or FDR, and this time they met on board a US Navy vessel that was moored in the North Atlantic Ocean, 5 kilometres or 3 miles away from the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard, which itself is a United States Navy shipyard in the town of Kittery on the southward boundary of Maine near to the city of Portsmouth in New Hampshire. However, these two agreements are not that significant compared to the third agreement, and this is the Greada Treaty or the third treaty, the third alien treaty. Now, the Greada Treaty took place purportedly between the 20th of February 1954 to the 21st of February 1954. And this Pacific Third Alien Treaty apparently occurred between the 33rd degree Scottish Rite Freemason and US President David Dwight Eisenhower and a designated group of diplomats from the Orion Confederation. Now, he was apparently on a vacation, which was really a fake or artificial vacation. It was just a cover story in the resort city known as Palm Springs in Riverside County in Southern California. But he was covertly escorted from his luxury hotel in Palm Springs to Muroc Airfield, which became known as Edwards Air Force Base in Kern County in Southern California, for these two back-to-back meetings, one on the 20th of February 1954, the other on the 21st of February 1954. Now, the Greada Treaty, I would say, is the most significant of the interstellar agreements between the Orion Grays or Rigelian Grays and the military-industrial complex of the MIC, and therefore the secret society networks, the hidden hand, the cabal, or the elites, or whatever you want to call them, on planet Earth. And the reason for that is because from the 20th of February 1954 through to the 21st of February 1954, and then onwards from there, you see the emergence of the alien abduction phenomena. You see the development of artificial intelligence or AI computer systems, and those artificial intelligence or AI computer systems originated from the planet Greada in the Orion constellation. So they were brought here as forms of technological development by the Orion Grays or Rigelian Grays. We see the main advances technologically in the construction techniques of what became known as deep underground military bases or D1 bases and deep underwater bases or D2 bases on planet Earth from those dates onwards. We also see the further expansion and development of the military industrial complex or MIC itself during that time period. So the Greada Treaty was very significant. We have to remember that the alien abduction phenomena, which really involved the extraction of human DNA and human genetic materials or in the form of tissues, was massively scaled up and massively increased, therefore, during that time from the 20th of February 1954 and the 21st of February 1954 onwards. We see this huge increase in the alien abduction phenomena in the United States of America and to some lesser extent in Canada, and perhaps countries like in Germany and France and one or two other countries in Western Europe, but predominantly in North America from that Pacific timeline onwards. So that wasn't the end of it with the interstellar agreements. There were many, many other agreements that took place. For example, during the 16th of February 1955, the fourth alien treaty occurred at Holloman Air Force Base, which is a military installation located next to the Central Business District, or CBD, of the city known as Alamogordo in Otero County in New Mexico in the United States of America. Then again, there was another interstellar agreement that was brought together and finalised because during the 7th of April 1956, there were two designated intelligence officers from the United States Air Force Security Service, or the USAFSS, who met with designated individuals acting as diplomats on behalf of the Orion Confederation under Project Plato. And these four Orion Grays or Rigelian Grays that met with these intelligence officers from the United States Air Force Security Service, or the USAFSS, were accompanied by two Zeta Reticulan Type A Grays and two Zeta Reticulan Type B Grays in the Chihuahuan Desert of southern New Mexico. They had then established from that main discussion what became known as the Fifth Alien Treaty. So again, these were all just continuations from the very first Alien Treaty, or the Envoy Treaty, that had taken place on the 11th of July 1934. And then there were other meetings that took place. So again, these were, I guess, were just verifications, contractual terms and conditions that were kind of mapped out, laid out, given confirmation and verification between the secret society networks and therefore the military-industrial complex of the MIC and these diplomats, acting on behalf of the Orion Confederation. And so we know, for example, that further meetings took place of some relevance, but nowhere near as relevant as the Greada Treaty, which took place over 2 days from the 20th of February 1954 to the 21st of February 1954. But what we do know is that the meeting that took place in the southern part of New Mexico then evolved and was then used to designate a further developmental interstellar agreement at Holloman Air Force Base that became known as the Sixth Treaty. Now, obviously, this was just clarifying further details, probably concerning alien abduction phenomena, technological exchanges, and also what will become known as the breakaway civilization, because it's very interesting to note that from the 20th of February 1954 and the 21st of February 1954, the very beginnings of what became known as the breakaway civilization started to emerge. So these successive interstellar agreements that were taking place, such as at Holloman Air Force Base, were actually contributing to the development of the human-centered, the human-based breakaway civilization that then developed space stations and various covert lunar bases, bases on the surface of the planet Mars, various bases in the main asteroid belt between the planet Mars and the planet Jupiter, and then onwards into the outer solar system, where further bases were established on the moons of Jupiter and the moons of Saturn, some of the moons of Uranus and the moons of Neptune. So, this is a vast subject to go into, but this coming back to these interstellar agreements. So you've had the 6th treaty, which took place at Holloman Air Force Base, which is located near to the Central Business District, or CBD, of the city known as Alamogordo in Otero County in New Mexico. Now, the additional meetings then occurred, and again they were at Holloman Air Force Base. This would have become known as the 7th Alien Treaty, and that took place on the 15th of April 1964. I think by that time, so much information sharing had been going on between these designated Orion Grays or Rigelian Grays. There was such vast developments going on technologically in terms of construction techniques and the building of the deep underground military bases, or D1 bases, and the deep underwater military bases, or D2 bases. The advances that were going on with advanced, artificial intelligence or AI computer systems was so incredible. And the development of the breakaway civilization in the inner solar system and the outer solar system by these dates, by those time periods, was so evolved and sophisticated that whatever was going on between these Orion Grays and Rigelian Grays, whichever word you want to use to define them, literally, at some point, the human beings, the Homo sapiens that were really in charge of the secret society networks, were looking to literally separate themselves permanently from the subversive dominance and control of the Orion Grays or Rigelian Grays by literally taking the technological exchanges that were going on in these interstellar agreements and then trying to build something that was built around the sovereignty of human protection and the need to develop the Homo sapien model in the solar system without any control or enslaving dominance from the Orion Grays or Rigelian Grays. So at some point they could counteract their own technological and scientific and engineering based devices of control over them, because it was such a main problem to deal with, because the alien abduction phenomena was becoming so prevalent in the United States of America and Canada, and much of what was given out in the terms and conditions of the various interstellar agreements, right the way back to the first Alien Treaty or the Envoy Treaty, the second Alien Treaty, the Greada Treaty, which became known as the third Alien Treaty, and on from there. Constant breaches were taking place. There wasn't any auditing done. There was a lot of inconsistencies. The Orion Grays, and known as the Rigelian Grays, were always known to be devious, constantly lying. They'd say one thing and do another, because they don't have any empathy or compassion for human beings whatsoever. They don't care about the human concept of existence. They're there for themselves, to control, to dominate, and to enslave, to ensure their power-based structure is kept in place. So when we look at, for example, at the 8th Alien Treaty, which also became known as the Vanguard Treaty, that took place at Holloman Air Force Base on the 24th of April 1964, we know that the 8th Alien Treaty, or the Vanguard Treaty, was really closure on any further agreements between the Orion Grays or Rigelian Grays, and the elites themselves. It was a point where there would be a separation, a parting of the ways, and from that time onwards, there were major problems that took place in various deep underground military bases, or D1 bases, or deep underwater military bases, or D2 bases on planet Earth, between the military industrial complex, the MIC, and the Orion Confederation, who were basically conflicting with each other for control over resources, technologies, scientific development, and engineering based mechanisms that could be used to ensure that, from both sides, that they could continue to hold dominance in the solar system. And of course, the Orion Grays, and therefore the Rigelian Grays, whichever name you want to give them, some people even call them the Tall Grays, the long-nosed greys, there's many different names they're given. They did not want, under any circumstances, human beings to gain control in terms of space technologies, space flight, or creating any kind of interstellar colonies beyond this solar system, because therefore they could not fully control human beings. So what we're looking at is a very internecine, invisible level of warfare that's been going on for a very long time on planet Earth behind the scenes, where the Orion Grays and the Rigelian Grays have wanted to maintain control. But the human model, Homo sapiens, therefore, have kind of like outgrown the need to want to be unconsciously dominated by them through the secret societies networks. So although at the top of the system, the control system, inverted commas, on planet Earth, there seems to be a lot of negatively focused obsession with controlling human consciousness. There's reasons behind some of that taking place that aren't all sinister or full of foreboding and worry and concern. It's actually because there perhaps is a greater interstellar threat of some nature or another out there way beyond our solar system. And I think you'll find that the Orion Grays, or the Rigelian Grays, that are sometimes also known as the tall Grays and the long-nosed Grays, are just a small aspect of it, because the Orion Confederation is known to be connected to the Alpha Draconis system. You have various reptilian hominids or reptilian beings that exist. Most of them tend to be quite malevolent. They don't particularly like human beings. And again, they're involved in enslavement, control and dominance and manipulation of not just human consciousness, but trying to control, even the vastness of ecosystems on thousands of planets and moons across vast interstellar reaches of thousands of light years, not just in this galaxy, but across numerous galaxies and star systems going on over vast expanses within this physical universe. But what we know is that those Pacific interstellar agreements, all of them, from the very first one that took place on the 11th of July 1934, that became known as the First Alien Treaty or the Envoy Treaty, to the very last one that became known as the Eighth Alien Treaty or the Vanguard Treaty on the 24th of April 1964, we know that there was an evolution, a development through those treaties of exchanging technologies and scientific based understanding. Yes, there was the alien abduction phenomena that has arisen from that, but what we do know is that from the 30th of November 2008 through to the 31st of October 2008, that the alien abduction phenomena predominantly across most countries on planet Earth came to an end. So the actual sinister nature of the Orion Grays or the Rigelian Grays, accompanied by their autonomic little drones, the Zeta Reticulan type A Grays and the Zeta Reticulan type B Grays, were no longer being reported as abducting vast numbers of human beings in the United States of America, some parts of Western Europe. That seemed to massively diminish. And one of the reasons we know it did is because many of the alien abduction experiences or abductees who were going to sessions with regressive hypnotherapists were suddenly finding that they weren't recalling under deep hypnosis what was going on. I mean, that touches on the work of Dolores Cannon, who was one of the greatest hypnotherapists in history on planet Earth. And she did vast amounts of work on understanding the alien abduction phenomena in her regressive hypnotherapy sessions with thousands and thousands of male and female clients, mainly in the United States of America, but some of them would travel from Canada, some of them traveled from parts of Western Europe to meet with her and her trained colleagues because they knew how important her work was. We know that there isn't vast reports now of these alien abductions taking place by the Orion Grays or the Rigelian Grays, and their autonomic servants known as the Zeta Reticulan type A Grays and the Zeta Reticulan type B Grays. That's a very positive thing for planet Earth. That means behind the scenes, in terms of frequency, vibration and energy, there's been a huge shift that's taken place. And that huge shift that has taken place is ensuring that human consciousness is eventually going to spiritually and emotionally develop. and that the breakaway civilization that is out there in the solar system, at some point there'll be a meeting of the minds between Homo sapiens on planet Earth and the Homo sapiens that form the breakaway civilization and their advanced space technologies, engineering, and everything else, because they have huge space stations out there, some of which orbit Jupiter and Saturn and Uranus and Neptune. But that's not readily available information that the public would even be aware of. But we know it exists, we know that they're out there, and we know that these eight treaties that were signed, these interstellar agreements, although they started off with a sinister intent from the 11th of July 1934 with the first alien treaty, or the Envoy Treaty, that was signed, we know that that was never going to be the case over many decades. We now know that human beings are learning unconsciously to spiritually and emotionally outgrow the need for the invisible masters, the invisible manipulators behind the scenes to still be there. And I think that also interconnects with the vibrational changes that perhaps are taking place with the geomagnetic ley lines and dimensional vortices around planet Earth that are being affected by electromagnetic changes because of the fluxes in cosmic radiation that are literally pulsating through our solar system that affect our G2 yellow dwarf star, known as the Sun, and the Sol 4 system that we live in. And that affects directly the magnetic field around planet Earth. So we know there's a lot of changes taking place that really, even with the advanced technologies that the Orion Grays or the Rigelian Grays have, they really have very little control over. There's not a lot they can do about that. So there's a lot of bonuses here taking place. So ironically, if the breakaway civilization has taken all that technology and science and they've redeveloped it and have managed to become completely autonomous and independent and are not in any way controlled by these Orion Grays and, therefore these Rigelian Grays, and certainly not controlled by the Zeta Reticulan type A Grays or Zeta Reticulan type B Grays in any way, and have complete, mental and emotional control over their own thoughts and are developing their own new technologies and scientific understanding, from the actual reverse engineered technologies or the technology exchanges that were going on during these 8 interstellar agreements, that can only be one thing: fantastic news, because it means that humanity goes on to the stars. So I'd say after 2030, maybe 2035 onwards, we're going to see a huge shift, focusing more on space-based technologies for humanity and moving out into the solar system and then into the interstellar reaches of the physical universe around us. I think I've given enough information in this talk. It's been a lot of information to convey and present, but it's been very enjoyable doing this. I hope you've enjoyed watching. There's many more videos to come in the near future. And on that note, I'd like to say take care, everybody, and I will speak to you soon.